Have you ever watched someone get humiliated in public and felt your heart sink? You know that feeling, when you want to speak up but something holds you back? Well, what I'm about to tell you is a story about what happens when cruelty meets courage. And trust me, you've never heard anything quite like this. It started on a Tuesday morning. Just an ordinary Tuesday. The kind where you're rushing to catch a flight, juggling your coffee, checking your phone. Nothing special. Nothing memorable. Except this Tuesday would be different. This Tuesday, a woman sitting in seat 3A of Liberty Sky Airlines Flight 447 would do something that would bring a multimillion-dollar airline to its knees. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Her name was Angela. Dr. Angela Carter, though nobody on that plane knew it yet. She sat in first class, row 3, window seat. She wore a charcoal gray suit, tailored, professional, the kind that says, "I mean business" without shouting it. Her hair was pulled back neatly. No flashy jewelry. No designer handbag screaming for attention. Just a black leather briefcase beside her feet and a thick binder open on her lap. To anyone glancing her way, she looked like just another business traveler. A consultant maybe, or a corporate executive heading to a meeting. Nobody special. But if you looked closer, if you really paid attention, you'd notice something different about her. The way she sat, perfectly upright, shoulders back, eyes focused. She wasn't scrolling through Instagram or watching a show on her tablet. She was reading, really reading, dense documents filled with technical language, aviation codes, safety regulations. Her pen moved across the pages, making notes in the margins, underlining, circling. This wasn't casual reading. This was work. Important work. But again, nobody noticed. Nobody cared. She was just another black woman in a suit, invisible in plain sight. Now, let me tell you about Rebecca Hayes. Rebecca had been a flight attendant for 15 years. 15 years of perfecting her smile, her walk, her entire performance. And make no mistake, it was a performance. She was the senior attendant on this flight, the one in charge, the one who trained new hires and intimidated anyone who dared challenge her authority. At 42 years old, she had blonde hair always pinned in a perfect bun, makeup applied like armor, and a smile that could cut glass. First class was her kingdom, her domain, her stage. She didn't just serve passengers, she controlled them. A raised eyebrow here, a dismissive tone there, little power plays that reminded everyone who was really in charge at 30,000 feet. The junior attendants feared her. Passengers who complained found their requests mysteriously delayed or forgotten. But Rebecca always kept her performance smooth enough that complaints never stuck. She knew how to charm the captains, how to deflect blame, how to make herself seem indispensable. She built a reputation, demanding yes, but she gets results. The airline loved her metrics. Fast service, high ratings, no scandals. What they didn't see was the fear in her junior crew members' eyes, the passengers who left feeling small and dismissed, the quiet cruelty that happened between the smiles. This was Rebecca's world, and in her world, she was queen. The cabin hummed with that pre-flight energy, passengers settling in, overhead bins slamming, the muffled sound of the jet bridge pulling away. Angela closed her binder and tucked it carefully into the seat pocket. She'd been traveling since dawn, reviewing inspection reports, preparing for meetings. Her throat was dry. She pressed the call button above her seat. Ding! Rebecca appeared almost instantly, as if she'd been waiting. She moved down the aisle with practiced grace, that professional smile fixed on her face. Yes, her tone was polite, but if you listened carefully, you could hear the edge underneath. The impatience. Angela looked up, meeting her eyes directly. "Could I please have a glass of water?" Simple. Polite. Nothing complicated. Rebecca's smile tightened just slightly. "We'll begin full beverage service after takeoff. Please wait until we're in the air." Angela's expression didn't change. Still calm. Still professional. "I understand. But I'd appreciate just a glass of water now, if possible. I've been traveling since early morning. Now, here's the thing. This was a reasonable request. Flight attendants bring pre-departure beverages to first-class passengers all the time. Water, champagne, orange juice. It's standard. It's expected. But Rebecca didn't see a reasonable request. She saw a challenge. Passengers in nearby seats started glancing over. The energy shifted. What should have been a simple interaction was becoming something else. Rebecca's smile never wavered, but her eyes went cold. She reached for the beverage cart without a word and grabbed a plastic cup. But instead of water, she poured orange juice. The cheap kind. The sticky kind. She pressed the cup into Angela's hand with just a little too much force. Here, orange juice. Full service begins after takeoff. Angela looked down at the cup, then back up at Rebecca. Her voice remained steady, but something flickered in her eyes. I asked for water. That's what we have available right now. Rebecca's voice dripped with false sweetness. Each word was a tiny act of defiance. The passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't right. Everyone could feel it, but nobody said anything. Nobody ever does, do they? Angela held the cup, her jaw tightening slightly. She could have backed down, could have just accepted it, could have avoided what was coming, but she didn't. She set the cup down on her tray table, her movements deliberate. I'd prefer water, please. And that's when Rebecca made her choice. Time seemed to slow down in that moment. Rebecca reached for the cup. Angela watched her, alert now, sensing something wrong, and then Rebecca's wrist tilted. Not accidentally, not a stumble, not a slip. Deliberately, the orange juice spilled in a cold, sticky flood, straight onto Angela's lap. It soaked through her suit pants, splashed across her binder of documents, dripped onto her leather briefcase. The juice was everywhere. Sticky, humiliating, impossible to ignore. Gasps erupted through the cabin. Someone laughed nervously. Then silence. Rebecca stood there, cup still in hand, and looked down at the mess she'd created. Her expression was pure theater. Wide eyes, hand to her mouth. The perfect picture of shock. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. Her voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. Loud enough to perform her innocence. These cups are so slippery. What a terrible accident. She grabbed 2 thin napkins, just 2, and tossed them onto Angela's lap like they were scraps for a dog. Angela sat frozen, juice dripping down her legs, her important documents ruined, her professional appearance destroyed. She looked down at the stains spreading across her suit, then slowly, very slowly, she looked back up at Rebecca. Their eyes met, and in that moment, everyone in first class felt it. The air pressure changed. This wasn't just about spilled juice anymore. This was war. Rebecca smiled her razor-sharp smile. You can file a complaint when we land. We're about to take off. Can't hold up the whole flight over a little spill, can we? She turned on her heel and walked away, her head high, her performance complete. Behind her, Angela sat in her ruined suit, juice still dripping, surrounded by the stares and whispers of 30 witnesses. She dabbed slowly at the stain with those useless napkins. Her face was calm, eerily calm, but her eyes were calculating, measuring, planning, because Rebecca Hayes had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd humiliated the wrong woman. And what happened next would change everything. Next, the badge, when power reveals itself, and a queen discovers she's been playing chess with a master. You know what's interesting about power? Real power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to. It sits quietly, watching, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And Rebecca Hayes was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Angela sat in her soaked suit, orange juice still sticky on her skin. The cabin had gone back to its normal hum, passengers returning to their phones, their books, their conversations. The show was over. Just another uncomfortable moment on a Tuesday flight. But Angela wasn't moving on. She dabbed at the stain methodically, her movements precise and controlled. But her eyes were doing something else entirely. They were watching, recording, cataloging every detail. She watched Rebecca move through the cabin like she owned it. Head high, smile bright, playing her role perfectly. She watched Rebecca dismiss another passenger's request with a wave of her hand. "After takeoff, sir. Please be patient." She watched Rebecca lean down to whisper something to a younger flight attendant, a girl who couldn't have been more than 25. The girl's face went pale. She nodded quickly, nervously, and hurried toward the back of the plane. Angela saw it all, and she understood exactly what was happening here. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was a pattern, a system, a culture of control built on intimidation and fear. And it was about to end. Angela reached up calmly and pressed the call button above her seat. Ding! Rebecca heard the chime and felt a flash of irritation. Of course it was seat 3A. Some people just didn't know when to let things go. She straightened her shoulders, adjusted her smile, and walked back down the aisle. When she reached Angela's seat, her voice was sugary sweet, but her eyes were ice. "Yes? Is there something else I can help you with?" Angela looked up at her, still calm, still composed, but now there was something different in her expression, something that made Rebecca pause just for a second. "I need to speak to the captain." Rebecca blinked, then laughed, actually laughed. "The captain? We're about to push back. The captain is busy preparing for departure. If you have a complaint, you can file it when we land. I need to speak to the captain now." Angela's voice was steady, firm, not angry, not loud, but unmovable. Passengers were watching again. Great, just great. Rebecca leaned down slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for Angela. But everyone nearby could still hear. "Listen, I said I was sorry about the spill, but we cannot delay this flight because you're upset about a little orange juice. You need to calm down and wait until we land. Don't cause a scene." "I'm not causing a scene." Angela's eyes never left Rebecca's face. "I'm making a formal request. Get the captain. Now." Rebecca's smile finally cracked. Her face flushed. Who did this woman think she was? Some corporate executive who thought she could order people around? Rebecca had dealt with demanding passengers before. She knew how to handle this. "Ma'am, if you continue to be disruptive, I will have to report this behavior. Flying is a privilege, not a right. Now please let me do my job." It was a threat. Subtle, but clear. "Sit down. Be quiet. Know your place." Rebecca turned to walk away, confident she'd won. That's when Angela spoke again. And this time, her voice cut through the cabin like a blade. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Rebecca froze. Slowly, she turned back around. And that's when Angela reached down into her leather briefcase. Time seemed to stop. Every passenger in first class was watching now. Even the people across the aisle had leaned over to see what was happening. The cabin crew in the galley had stopped talking. Angela's hand emerged from the briefcase, holding a black leather wallet. Not a designer wallet. Not some flashy brand. Just a simple, professional leather wallet. She held it up at eye level and flipped it open. The overhead lights caught the gold badge inside. Federal Aviation Administration. Office of Aviation Safety. Inspector. The gasps weren't subtle this time. They rippled through the cabin like electricity. Phones came out. People leaned forward in their seats. Whispers started immediately. "Oh my God. Is that... she's FAA?" Rebecca's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion. Disbelief. Then pure, ice-cold terror. Her mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No words came out. Angela's voice was calm. Professional. But every word landed like a hammer. "My name is Dr. Angela Carter. I am a Federal Aviation Safety Inspector with the FAA. I've been conducting a routine compliance inspection of Liberty Sky Airlines for the past 3 weeks. My credentials are current. My authority is absolute." She paused, letting that sink in. Letting Rebecca understand the magnitude of what had just happened. You didn't just spill orange juice on a passenger. You deliberately destroyed federal inspection documents. You compromised federal property. You interfered with an official investigation. And you attempted to intimidate a federal officer in the performance of her duties. The cabin was dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. This isn't customer service anymore. This is federal interference. And it's a crime. Rebecca's knees actually wobbled. She grabbed the seat back beside her for support. No, that was an accident. I didn't know. You didn't need to know who I was. Angela's voice was steel now, still calm, but absolutely unforgiving. You should have treated me with basic human dignity simply because I'm a person. But you chose humiliation. You chose cruelty. And you did it deliberately. I didn't. I saw you whisper to your junior crew member just now. What did you tell her? To stay quiet? To back up your story? To protect you? Rebecca's face confirmed everything. Angela stood up, slowly, deliberately. Even with orange juice staining her suit, she commanded the entire space. Captain, now. Rebecca stumbled backward, her hand shaking as she reached for the intercom. Her voice cracked when she spoke. Captain Dawson, we have a situation in first class. Your presence is required immediately. Within 60 seconds, the cockpit door opened. Captain Michael Dawson was a man in his mid-50s with 25 years of flying experience. He'd seen everything: drunk passengers, medical emergencies, engine failures. He was trained to stay calm under pressure. But when he walked into that first-class cabin and saw the badge in Angela's hand, his expression changed instantly. Every pilot knows that badge. Every airline employee fears it, because that badge has the power to ground planes, suspend licenses, end careers, shut down entire airlines. Captain Dawson. Angela's voice was professional, courteous. Dr. Angela Carter, FAA Safety Inspector. I need to speak with you privately about a serious incident that just occurred on this aircraft. The captain's eyes flicked to Rebecca, who looked like she might faint, then to the orange juice stain on Angela's suit, then to the passengers, all staring, phones recording. Of course, Inspector. Right away. Rebecca found her voice. It came out desperate, pleading. Captain, it was an accident. She's exaggerating. I didn't know who she was. It was just a spill. Ms. Hayes. The captain's voice was cold. He knew. He understood immediately. Step back. But Captain. Step back. Rebecca's mouth snapped shut, but her eyes were wild, panicked. She looked around the cabin like a trapped animal, searching for support, for sympathy, for anything. She found none. That's when Angela spoke again, and what she said next changed everything. Captain, before we continue, I need to hear from your junior flight attendant, the young woman who was standing near the galley when this incident occurred. All eyes turned to the back of first class. There, partially hidden behind a beverage cart, stood a young woman, early 20s, dark hair pulled back. Her name tag read Jessica Martinez, in training. She looked terrified. Ms. Martinez. Angela's voice softened slightly. You saw what happened. I need you to tell the captain, truthfully, what you witnessed. Jessica's face went pale. She glanced at Rebecca, who was staring at her with an expression that screamed, "Don't you dare." Jessica had worked under Rebecca for 6 months. 6 months of being criticized, belittled, and controlled. 6 months of watching Rebecca bully passengers and crew alike. 6 months of being told that speaking up would end her career. Before it started, Rebecca had taught her the rules. Don't question. Don't challenge. Don't cross me. And now, Jessica stood at a crossroads. The entire cabin held its breath. Jessica. Angela's voice was gentle but firm. I know you're scared. I know you feel loyal to your senior crew member. But I need you to understand something. Right now, in this moment, you have more power than anyone on this plane. You have the power to tell the truth. And the truth, no matter how hard it is to speak, always matters more than loyalty to a lie. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. Her hands trembled. Rebecca's voice cracked. Jessica, don't. The truth, Ms. Martinez. The captain's voice was quiet but commanding. What did you see? The silence stretched. 1 second. 2 seconds. 5 seconds. Then Jessica spoke. Her voice was barely above a whisper, But in that silent cabin, everyone heard every word. She poured it on purpose. The words detonated like a bomb. I saw it. I was standing right there. The passenger asked for water 3 times. Politely. And Ms. Hayes got angry. She told me to go to the back. But I looked back and I saw her tilt the cup deliberately. She spilled it on purpose. Then she told me if anyone asked, it was an accident, and I needed to back her up, or she'd make sure I never flew again. Tears streamed down Jessica's face. But she kept talking. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. And it wasn't the first time. She's done things like this before. To passengers who complain. To people she doesn't like. Jessica's voice broke. She runs this cabin like it's her personal kingdom. And we're all too scared to say anything because she'll destroy us. The truth poured out like water breaking through a dam. And Rebecca Hayes, the queen of the cabin, the woman who'd ruled with fear for 15 years, stood frozen as her entire world collapsed around her. Her mouth opened. No words came. Her face was white as paper. Angela turned to Captain Dawson. Her voice was calm, final, absolute. Captain, by the authority vested in me under FAA Order 8900.1, I am ordering this aircraft grounded pending immediate safety inspection. This crew has demonstrated a pattern of misconduct that poses a direct threat to passenger safety and federal operations. No one boards or deplanes until my investigation is complete. The captain didn't hesitate. Understood, Inspector. He reached for the intercom. Ground crew, this is Captain Dawson. We are returning to the gate. Do not disconnect ground power. Repeat, we are not departing. The plane shuddered as it began to taxi backward. Passengers groaned. Some complained, but most just stared. Phones out, recording every second of history being made. Rebecca Hayes stood in the aisle, her crown shattered, her kingdom burning. She'd humiliated the wrong woman. And now, the entire world was about to watch her fall. Next, when the crown falls, the investigation begins, the truth comes out, and 2 women's lives change forever. One rises, one falls, and justice is finally served. You know what they say about consequences? They don't arrive all at once. They unfold, slowly, deliberately, like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. And for Rebecca Hayes, the dominoes were about to fall hard. The plane rolled back to the gate in complete silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Passengers sat frozen. Phones still recording, watching history unfold in real time. Rebecca stood in the aisle, her hands trembling. Her perfect composure, the armor she'd worn for 15 years, had completely shattered. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair had come loose from its perfect bun. She looked small, fragile, human. For the first time in her career, Rebecca Hayes had no control. Captain Dawson spoke into the intercom, his voice calm but firm. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. There's been an incident that requires immediate attention. Please remain in your seats. This will be resolved shortly. The moment the plane stopped moving, the door opened. And that's when they came. First, 2 FAA officials in dark suits, badges already out. Then a Liberty Sky executive in a crisp white shirt, his face pale, with panic. Then security personnel. Then more airline staff. They poured into that first-class cabin like a flood. The lead FAA supervisor, a stern woman in her 50s named Patricia Morrison, walked straight to Angela. They exchanged a brief handshake, professional and precise. Inspector Carter, what's the situation? Angela's voice was calm, measured. She'd done this before. Deliberate interference with a federal inspection. Destruction of federal property. Intimidation of crew members. Systematic misconduct, creating an unsafe working environment. I need this aircraft and crew secured for formal investigation. Patricia's expression darkened. She turned to Rebecca. Ms. Hayes, you're suspended effective immediately. Badge and credentials. Now. Rebecca's mouth opened. You can't, this is... Now. With shaking hands, Rebecca unpinned her badge. The golden wings she'd worn so proudly for 15 years. The symbol of her authority. Her power. Her identity. She held it for a moment, staring at it like she couldn't believe this was real. Then Patricia took it from her hands. Just like that, Rebecca Hayes stopped being a flight attendant. She was escorted to the back of the plane, away from passengers, away from cameras, away from the kingdom she'd ruled for so long. As she walked past seat 3A, she glanced at Angela one last time. Angela looked back, her expression unreadable. No anger, no triumph, just calm. Because this wasn't personal. This was justice. What happened next moved fast. The passengers were deplaned, frustrated, yes, but also buzzing with excitement. They just witnessed something incredible. Their phones were already lighting up social media. You won't believe what just happened on my flight. Flight attendant spilled juice on an FAA inspector. She got busted on camera. Within an hour, the video was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. The footage was shaky but clear enough. You could see the spill, hear the gasps, watch Rebecca's face drain of color when Angela showed her badge. By evening, it was trending worldwide. Hashtag Justice on Flight 447. Hashtag Orange Juice Revenge. Hashtag Karma at 30,000 feet. But while the internet celebrated, something far more important was happening behind closed doors. Angela sat in a private conference room at the airport, her laptop open, her soaked suit replaced with spare clothes from her carry-on. She looked exhausted but focused. Across from her sat 6 members of Liberty Sky's management team, including the CEO. They looked terrified. Patricia Morrison sat beside Angela, taking notes. "Let me be very clear," Angela said, her voice cutting through the tension. "What happened today wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a much larger problem. So, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need honest answers. How long has Rebecca Hayes been operating this way?" Silence, because from what I observed, and from witness testimony, this is a pattern. Years of intimidation, bullying, misconduct, and it was allowed to continue because nobody wanted to confront it. The CEO, a man in his 60s named Richard Foster, cleared his throat. "Inspector Carter, I assure you we had no knowledge of—" "Then you weren't looking?" Angela's tone was sharp. "Jessica Martinez told me Rebecca threatened her career if she spoke up. That means other crew members were threatened too. It means complaints were ignored or suppressed. It means your system failed." She pulled up a document on her laptop and turned it toward them. "I've been inspecting Liberty Sky for 3 weeks. I've interviewed 43 crew members. And do you know what I found? Fear. Systematic fear. Junior staff too terrified to report problems. Senior crew protecting each other instead of passengers. A culture where power matters more than safety." She leaned forward. "You're not just dealing with one bad flight attendant. You're dealing with institutional failure. And if you don't fix it completely, immediately, I will ground your entire fleet until you do." The room went cold. Richard Foster swallowed hard. "What do you need from us?" Angela didn't ask for much. She demanded everything. Within 48 hours, Liberty Sky Airlines launched the most comprehensive internal investigation in its history. Every crew member who'd worked with Rebecca Hayes was interviewed. Anonymous reporting channels were opened. Third-party consultants were brought in to audit company culture. And what they found was worse than anyone imagined. Rebecca hadn't been alone. She'd been protected, enabled. Her supervisor, a man named Daniel Kruger, had received multiple complaints about her over the years. He buried every single one. Why? Because Rebecca's metrics looked good on paper. Fast service, high customer satisfaction scores, no public scandals. Until now, Daniel Kruger was fired within a week. So were 3 other supervisors who'd participated in the cover-up. The head of HR was forced to resign. Liberty Sky's training program was completely overhauled. New protocols, mandatory sensitivity training, zero-tolerance policies for workplace intimidation. Anonymous reporting systems were implemented. Independent oversight committees were formed. Cultural audits became quarterly requirements. And every single change was public, transparent. Accountable. Because the internet was watching. Passengers were watching. Employees were watching. Liberty Sky Airlines had no choice but to change. Or die. But while institutions can reform people, people face consequences. Let me tell you what happened to Rebecca Hayes. She was fired. Obviously. No severance. No recommendations. No second chances. But it didn't stop there. The FAA launched a formal investigation into her conduct. They reviewed every flight she'd worked for the past 5 years. Passenger complaints that had been dismissed were suddenly reopened. Crew members who'd been too afraid to speak up before, they came forward now. The stories poured out. A diabetic passenger whose insulin medication Rebecca had mocked. An elderly man she'd refused to help to the bathroom because he should have gone before boarding. A mother traveling alone with twins who Rebecca berated for letting her children cry. Years of cruelty, years of abuse, all documented, all verified. Rebecca's flight attendant certification was permanently revoked. She was blacklisted from every major airline in the country. Then came the lawsuits, passengers she'd mistreated, crew members she'd harassed. They all wanted justice. Rebecca lost everything. Her apartment? Couldn't afford it anymore. Her friends? They disappeared when the scandal hit. Her reputation? Destroyed across every social media platform. 6 months after that Tuesday morning, Rebecca Hayes, the woman who'd ruled first-class cabins like a queen, was working at an airport coffee kiosk. Minimum wage, no benefits, no authority. Every single day, she watched planes take off through the windows, jets climbing into skies she would never touch again. She saw flight attendants walking past in their crisp uniforms, living a life she'd thrown away. All because she'd chosen cruelty over kindness. All because she'd spilled orange juice on the wrong woman. But here's the thing about justice. It's not just about punishment. It's about elevation. Remember Jessica Martinez? The young flight attendant who found her courage? Her life changed too, but in a very different way. Within a month, Jessica was promoted to senior crew member. Liberty Sky praised her integrity publicly, made her the face of their cultural reformation. She became a trainer, teaching new flight attendants not just how to serve passengers, but how to treat them with dignity, how to stand up for what's right, how to find courage when fear tries to silence you. She gave interviews, spoke at conferences, became a voice for change in the aviation industry. The girl who'd been too terrified to speak up became the woman who inspired thousands to find their own voices. And every time she pinned on her wings before a flight, she thought about that Tuesday morning, about the moment she chose truth over fear, about the moment she chose to be brave. 6 months after the incident, Dr. Angela Carter boarded another Liberty Sky flight. She'd completed her inspection, filed her reports, implemented the changes. Now, she was just another passenger traveling for work. She settled into seat 4B, not first class this time, just regular economy, and pulled out her laptop. A flight attendant approached, young, smiling, genuine. "Can I get you anything before takeoff, ma'am?" Angela looked up and smiled. "A glass of water would be wonderful, thank you." "Of course. I'll bring that right away." 30 seconds later, the attendant returned with a full glass of ice water, a napkin, and a warm smile. "Here you go. And please let me know if you need anything else during the flight. Anything at all. We're here to serve you." Angela took the glass, the cool condensation pleasant against her fingers. "Thank you. I appreciate that." The attendant nodded and moved on to the next passenger, offering the same genuine kindness, the same respectful service. Angela sipped her water and looked around the cabin. Everything looked the same. Same seats, same overhead bins, same recycled air humming through the vents. But everything was different. The crew moved differently, spoke differently, treated passengers like human beings instead of inconveniences. One small act of courage, Jessica's testimony, had changed an entire airline's culture. One moment of accountability, Angela's intervention, had reformed a broken system. And one woman's fall from grace had become a lesson for thousands. Power without respect is worthless. Control without kindness is cruelty. Authority without humanity is tyranny. Angela closed her laptop and leaned back in her seat. Outside the window, Atlanta spread below in a patchwork of lights. The plane lifted smoothly into the evening sky. And somewhere down there, in an airport terminal, Rebecca Hayes was making someone's coffee, watching planes rise, knowing she would never rise with them again. So, let me ask you something. If you'd been on that flight, sitting in first class, watching that orange juice spill, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up? Or would you have looked away, hoping someone else would handle it? Because here's what I learned from Dr. Angela Carter's story. Dignity isn't just about how we treat ourselves. It's about how we treat others. And justice doesn't happen by accident. It happens because brave people choose truth over comfort. Jessica Martinez could have stayed silent. She could have protected Rebecca, could have protected herself. But she chose courage. And that choice changed everything. So, the next time you see someone being treated unfairly, in a store, on a plane, at a restaurant, anywhere, remember this story. Remember that your voice matters. Your truth matters. Your courage can change more than you know. Rebecca Hayes learned that power without respect is nothing. Dr. Angela Carter proved that dignity always wins. And Jessica Martinez showed us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply tell the truth. This story reminds us that in a world where cruelty sometimes feels like power, kindness is the real strength. Where arrogance mistakes itself for authority, dignity reveals what leadership truly means. And where silence protects the guilty, courage protects everyone else. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, because stories like this, stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, need to be told. They remind us who we want to be, who we can be, who we should be. Like, comment and subscribe for more true stories that restore your faith in justice, courage, and the power of doing what's right. Thank you for watching. And remember, treat everyone with dignity, because you never know who's sitting in seat 3A.